My name is Dave Lucas. This poem is called Midst of a Burning Fiery Furnace. Let the foundries burn the whole city then, black the edges and the brazen joints. Let the salamander sleep in his well of flame. Because the worst has happened, and yet so much more remains to be burnt, smelt and milled and cast. These remains. Suppose this blistered city would smolder well after all those who live by the blast of the furnace have left themselves to ash. I have heard of that alchemy of steel. I am familiar with the dying arts. Let them burn the dark night livid, my poor republic of ingot and slag. I am also seething in my depths. I too have come to forge. River on Fire. Stranger, the way of the world is crooked, and anything can burn. Nothing impossible. Who comes to send fire upon the earth may find as much already kindled, may find his city bistre and sulphurous, pitched and grimed. On those suffered banks we sat down and wept. There the prophets, if there had been prophets, would have baptized us in fire. Who says impossible, they fill his mouth with ash. They quench him as if a man could be made steel. A crooked way the world wends, and the rivers, and the prophets. Go down and tell them what you have seen, that the river burned and was not consumed. Love Poem for an Apocalypse. I wish I'd met you after everything had burned, after the markets crash and global sea levels rise, the forests scorched, the grasslands trespassed. My love, it is a whole life's work to disappear. Ask the god with his head in the wolf's mouth, or the serpent intent on swallowing all the earth. Ask the Senate Subcommittee for Market Solutions for late capitalism and early onset dementia. You and a bird flu could make me believe in fate. I think we might be happy in the end, in the dark of a hollow tree, a seed bank or blast-proof bunker, if only you would sing the song I love. You know the one, about our precious eschatology, the one I always ask to hear to lull me back to sleep. This essay is called The Common Tongue. I should be finishing my lesson. In theory, that's why I've stolen this hour, left my office on the Case Western Reserve University Quad, and crossed Euclid Avenue for the anonymity of the Student Center. I'm supposed to be prepping some illuminating remarks on Paul Muldoon's Quoof, a poem about a word, our family word for the hot water bottle, and about the familial and tribal idiosyncrasies of the supposedly common language we speak. There is so much to say. But my mind is elsewhere. The language of the poem drowns in the wash of the languages around me. I recognize the tenor of the conversations, staccato laughter, gossipy whispers and gasps, but their meaning I cannot parse. I am at sea in waves of Chinese and Arabic, perhaps a swell of Hebrew. I close my eyes. Maybe I didn't come here to write after all. I think I came to listen. It's a good place for a poet to be adrift, to be reminded of the strangeness of these lovely sounds we make, the miracle that those sounds can mean anything at all. As in Quoof, where that single, awkward syllable falls between two near strangers about to share a bed for the first time. I have taken it into so many lovely heads, the poem's speaker says, or laid it between us like a sword. How often a sword, rather than the liquid images I prefer, is the appropriate metaphor. Language is politics, too. I scroll through my Facebook feed and find a story of a train passenger in Wales who scolds a hijab-garbed woman for not speaking English. Another passenger scolds him back. We're in Wales, and she's speaking Welsh. Maybe the story is apocryphal, cooked up to confirm certain ideas about immigration and tolerance, identity and decency. Maybe. But the questions raised are real. Which English? Whose? I speak a mongrel of Anglo-Saxon, French, and Latin, a word horde that also offers the Arabic loans coffee and algebra, the Mandarin gung-ho, and ketchup and kowtow from Cantonese. We speak the history of those places and this place, histories of cross-pollination and colonization, marriage and blood. Blood, from the Old English blot, kith of the Old High German. How brusque and plosive this English must have sounded to my great-grandparents, Italian immigrants who settled in a neighborhood not too far from University Circle, but who never settled into the consonant-thick speech they heard all around them. My grandfather and his siblings translated the New World for them as best they could, but they could not keep the old tongue for themselves, other than a few stray words to curse or bless. I don't know much about the languages I overhear from my place in the food court, but I do know that the language I speak reinvents itself constantly, without permission or apology. I know how much I love those places, here and at the West Side Market, La Mexicana in Painesville and Unger's in Cleveland Heights, where the waters of English meet the waters of other tongues and flow together into something else. I know my own language is reinventing itself as we all speak. Sometimes I cringe at these changes. I have given up on literally meaning literally and not figuratively. That ship has literally sailed. I have ended my long resistance to the emoji. If a smiling, crying, laughing face is a contemporary Rosetta Stone that helps us understand each other, it will survive despite my Luddite skepticism. No alphabet stays fixed forever, as the Old English thorn might attest. But back to my lesson. I think I'll pair Quoof with Walt Whitman's essay Slang in America, in which he reminds us that language is not an abstract construction of the learned or of dictionary makers, but has its bases broad and low, close to the ground. Its final decisions are made by the masses, people nearest the concrete, having most to do with actual land and sea. Yesterday's slang and misusage is tomorrow's standard English. Sometimes my students scoff at Quoof. The word itself is too bizarre, or the phenomenon of the hot water bottle so unfamiliar that they've never needed a word for it. Sometimes they say they have no family words, nothing so absurd as that. So I ask them what they call the remote control in their households. Then my own language must expand to accommodate their clickers, their thingamabobs, doodads, and doohickeys. Meanwhile, the work of language goes on, in the student center and elsewhere. Even now, someone new to Cleveland is sitting in another alcove arguing that pop is soda, that you stand on, not in, line. Across Euclid Avenue, others are translating abstract ideas into the language of mathematics, with its Arabic numerals and Greek variables and constants. Down the street, the strings section practices to match their individual senses of allegro into a musical lingua franca. Even now, someone is asking directions to the Student Center, to the Tinkumville University Center. But at Case, we called it the Tink. The word lies like that metaphorical sword between us and the rest of the world. My hour is up, and I still haven't finished my lesson, or at least not the one I'd planned. I pack up for class, my head swims. There is so much to say, and so many ways to say it. What can we do but listen? What can we do but try to understand?